7 days. That's all it took for my wife to destroy a marriage I thought was solid. But here's the thing. She didn't cheat, didn't lie about money, didn't do any of the obvious relationship killers. Instead, she did something far worse. She decided to test me like I was some kind of lab rat. It started on a Monday morning. I'm getting ready for work. Same routine I've had for years. Coffee first, shower, then breakfast while checking emails. My favorite mug sits on the counter, the one she bought me for our 2nd anniversary. Simple white ceramic with "World's Best Husband" in faded blue letters. Nothing fancy, but it meant something. I'm reaching for it when I hear the crash. She's standing there, pieces of my mug scattered across the kitchen floor, looking at me with this weird expression I couldn't read. Not apologetic, not shocked. Just watching. "Oops," she says, stepping over the broken pieces. "Guess you'll have to use a different cup." I stare at the mess, then at her. "That was my favorite mug." She shrugs, already moving toward the coffee maker like nothing happened. "Relax, it's just a mug. There's like 10 others in the cabinet." Something felt off, but I figured maybe she was having a rough morning. We all have those days where everything seems to go wrong. I grabbed a paper towel, cleaned up the pieces, and used a different cup. No big deal, right? Work was busy, so I didn't think much about the mug incident. Around lunch, I texted her about dinner. We had plans to try that new Italian place downtown, something we'd both been looking forward to all week. Her response came back fast. "Changed my mind. Let's just order pizza." I called her. "What happened to the Italian place? I just don't feel like going out anymore. Pizza's easier." But we made reservations. "You were excited about trying their osso buco. Plans change. It's not that serious." She hung up before I could respond. By evening, I was starting to feel like I was walking on eggshells. The mug, the dinner cancellation, nothing huge individually, but together they felt deliberate. Like she was testing my reactions. We ended up eating takeout pizza in front of the TV. I tried to keep things normal, talking about my day, asking about hers. She gave short answers, scrolling through her phone while barely acknowledging what I was saying. "You should probably change before we watch the movie," she said during a commercial break. I looked down at my shirt, the blue button-down I'd worn to work. Nothing wrong with it. Change into what? Something that doesn't make you look like you're trying too hard. You always overdress when we're just staying home. I just got home from work. This is what I wore to the office. She rolled her eyes. Exactly. We're not at the office. You look ridiculous wearing that to eat pizza and watch Netflix. I'd worn similar clothes around the house hundreds of times. She'd never complained before, but something in her tone made me pause. There was an edge there, like she was pushing to see how I'd respond. "I'm comfortable in this," I said calmly. "Fine. Look overdressed if you want. I'm just saying it's weird." The rest of the evening passed in this strange tension. Every conversation felt like she was waiting for me to react to something, like she had some kind of agenda I wasn't aware of. When we went to bed, she turned away without our usual goodnight kiss. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the day. The broken mug that felt too convenient. The canceled dinner she'd been excited about. The criticism of clothes she'd never had a problem with before. Each incident alone meant nothing, but together they painted a picture I didn't want to see. Was she testing me? Seeing how much I'd take before I snapped? The thought seemed paranoid, but I couldn't shake it. Something had shifted in our dynamic, and I had no idea why. I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was stressed about work, or dealing with something she hadn't told me about yet. Maybe tomorrow would be different. I was wrong. Tomorrow would be worse. But I had no idea that by day 3, I'd discover exactly what she was doing. And more importantly, I'd discover exactly what I was willing to tolerate. Spoiler alert, it wasn't much. Tuesday morning arrived with more of the same energy from the night before. She was already up when I woke up, which was unusual since I'm typically the early riser. I found her in the kitchen, fully dressed, and holding my car keys. "I need to borrow your car today," she announced without looking up from her phone. "What happened to yours?" "Nothing happened to it. I just want to use yours." This was new. We each had our own vehicles, and she'd never shown interest in driving mine before. Her car was newer, more comfortable, with better gas mileage. Mine was practical, but nothing special. "Okay," I said, grabbing my backup keys. "Just remember it needs gas. The tank's nearly empty." She nodded absently, still focused on her phone screen. I took her car to work, which meant adjusting the seat, mirrors, and radio stations. Small inconveniences, but they added up. Around 3 in the afternoon, I got a text from her. "Your car's in the driveway." That was it. No, thanks for letting me borrow it, or explanation of where she'd gone. Just a fact delivered like a business transaction. When I got home that evening, I checked the gas gauge out of habit. Empty. Completely empty. The low fuel warning light glowed orange on the dashboard. "The tank's empty," I said when I walked inside. She was sitting on the couch, painting her nails. "Yeah, I forgot to fill it up." "Forgot?" I specifically mentioned it this morning. I had other things on my mind. "It's not a big deal. Just get gas tomorrow. But now I have to stop for gas in the morning, which means leaving earlier for work." She looked up from her nails with an expression of exaggerated patience. "It's 5 minutes at a gas station. You're being dramatic." Dramatic? For pointing out that she'd ignored my one simple request and created an inconvenience for me. I felt the first real flicker of anger, but I pushed it down. Maybe she really had forgotten. People forget things. The next incident happened during my afternoon conference call. I was in my home office, door closed, discussing quarterly projections with my team. Important stuff that required my full attention. Halfway through the presentation, my office door burst open. "Are you almost done?" she asked, not bothering to lower her voice. I muted my microphone quickly. "I'm in a meeting." "I know, but I need to ask you something." "Can it wait?" "I'll be done in 20 minutes. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe. "Is this meeting more important than me?" The question caught me off guard. Through my computer screen, I could see my colleagues waiting, probably wondering why I'd gone silent. My boss was mid-sentence when I'd muted. "It's not about importance. It's about timing. I'm working." "So you were saying it's more important than me?" "I'm saying I'm in the middle of something. Give me 20 minutes. She made a huffing sound and left, but not before saying loudly enough for my microphone to pick up, "Fine. I guess work comes first." I unmuted myself and apologized to the team, making some excuse about a delivery. But the damage was done. My concentration was shot, and I could tell my boss wasn't pleased with the interruption. That evening, we went to dinner at a casual restaurant we'd been to before. Nothing fancy, just good food and a relaxed atmosphere. Or it should have been relaxed. The server was a guy probably in his early 20s, friendly in that professional way waiters are trained to be. He took our drink orders, recommended a few dishes, made small talk about the weather. Standard service. But my wife responded like he was flirting with her. "Oh, you think the salmon's good?" "I love a man who knows his fish," she said with a smile I'd never seen her use with service staff before. The server, probably used to customers being friendly, smiled back politely. "It's definitely popular. The chef does great things with the seasoning." "I bet he does," she replied, maintaining eye contact just a little too long. I watched this exchange with growing discomfort. When the server left to put in our order, I leaned forward. "What was that about?" "What was what about?" "The way you were talking to him." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "I was being friendly. You know, like normal people do with service workers." "That wasn't friendly. That was something else. You're being paranoid." "He was nice, so I was nice back. Unless you think I should be rude to people." When the server returned with our meals, she ramped it up even more. Asking his name, complimenting his recommendations, laughing at things that weren't particularly funny. He remained professional, but I could see he was getting a little uncomfortable with the attention. "Is everything okay here?" he asked after delivering our plates. "Perfect," she said, touching his arm briefly. "You're taking such good care of us." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't random friendliness or absent-minded behavior. This was deliberate. She was watching my reactions, gauging how I'd respond to her flirting with another man right in front of me. On the drive home, she brought it up before I could. "You seemed tense at dinner." "Did I?" "Very tense. Almost like you were jealous or something." "Should I have been?" She shrugged. "That's up to you. I can't control how you feel about me being nice to people." "Nice? Is that what we're calling it?" "What would you call it?" I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. We sat in silence for a moment before I answered. "I'd call it testing me." For just a second, something flickered across her face. Recognition, maybe, or satisfaction. But it was gone so quickly I almost missed it. "Testing you? That's a weird thing to say." "Is it?" She got out of the car without answering, leaving me to follow her into the house. That night, lying in bed, I connected the dots I'd been trying to ignore. The broken mug, the canceled dinner, the closed criticism, the borrowed car returned empty, the work interruption, the restaurant flirting. None of it was random. None of it was accidental. She was testing me, systematically pushing boundaries to see how much I'd tolerate before I pushed back. The question was why. I was about to find out. And when I did, She'd discover that I had limits she hadn't counted on. Wednesday morning changed everything. I woke up to find my desk completely cleared off. The project I'd been working on for 3 weeks, sketches, notes, research materials, everything, was gone. I found her in the kitchen, casually eating cereal like nothing had happened. "Where are my project papers?" She didn't look up from her bowl. "What papers?" "The ones that were on my desk. The restoration proposal for the community center. 3 weeks of work." "Oh, those." She took another spoonful of cereal. I threw them away. They were cluttering up the table. The words hit me like cold water. "You threw them away?" The table looked messy. I cleaned it up. I walked to the trash can and started pulling out crumpled papers. My handwritten notes, architectural sketches, cost estimates, meeting minutes. Everything was there, coffee-stained and wrinkled. These weren't clutter. This was my work. "It's just papers. You can redo it." "Just papers?" This was weeks of research. Measurements, calculations, vendor quotes. She finally looked at me, and there was something in her expression I'd never seen before. A coldness that made my skin crawl. "You're being dramatic. It's not that serious." I stared at her, holding the ruined papers in my hands. Something clicked in my mind, like a puzzle piece falling into place. "What are you doing?" "Cleaning house." "Someone has to." "No. I mean, what are you really doing?" The mug, the car, the dinner, the restaurant, interrupting my meeting, and now this. "What are you doing?" She set down her spoon and looked at me with what I can only describe as smug satisfaction. "I'm testing you." There it was. The truth I'd been circling for 3 days. Testing me for what? To see how much you'll tolerate before you actually act like a man and stand up for yourself. The words hung in the air between us. I felt something fundamental shift inside me, like a door slamming shut. "Most men would have exploded by now," she continued. "Would have yelled, demanded respect, put me in my place. But you just keep taking it. You're weaker than I thought you were." I set the papers down on the counter very carefully. When I spoke, my voice was calm. Deadly calm. "You're absolutely right." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "What?" "You're right. I do have a tolerance limit. And you just found it." I pulled out my phone and started making calls. First, I changed the Wi-Fi password. Then I called the bank and had her removed as an authorized user on my credit card. While she watched in growing alarm, I called my insurance company and took her off the car policy. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "The same thing you've been doing. Testing limits." "Stop this. It was just an experiment. And you just passed it." "I learned exactly what I need to know about you." I called our internet provider next, then the phone company. Every shared account, every convenience she took for granted, I systematically removed her access. "You can't be serious about this," she said, her voice rising. "You wanted to see what I'd tolerate. Turns out, I don't tolerate people who treat me like a lab experiment." "It wasn't like that." "What was it like then?" "Explain to me how destroying my work and calling me weak was supposed to improve our relationship." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in 3 days, she didn't have a ready answer. I kept making calls. My lawyer was next on the list. "Hi, Dave. I need to discuss divorce proceedings. Can you fit me in today?" That got her attention. She grabbed my arm. "Hang up the phone." I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. "Dave?" "Yeah, I'm still here. 3 o'clock works fine." I said hang up. I ended the call and gently removed her hand from my arm. "Don't touch me. You're overreacting. It was just a test to see if you really love me. And I'm testing to see if you really respect me. So far, you're failing badly." She started crying then. Real tears, not the manipulative kind. But I felt nothing. The part of me that would have comforted her, that would have apologized and tried to fix things, had died the moment she called me weak. "I was trying to make our relationship stronger," she sobbed. "By breaking it apart piece by piece. By seeing how much disrespect I'd swallow before fighting back. It wasn't supposed to go this far." "How far was it supposed to go? What was day 4 going to bring?" "Day 5. She couldn't answer that either. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "I'm going to work. When I get back tonight, we're going to have a very different conversation than the ones we've been having." "Where are you going?" "To see a lawyer. To find out exactly what my options are when my wife decides to treat me like her personal psychology experiment." "Please don't do this." I stopped at the door and turned back to her. "You wanted to test my limits. Congratulations. You found them." As I drove to work, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. For 3 days, I'd been confused, trying to understand what was happening to my marriage. Now I knew. She'd systematically disrespected me to see how much I'd take. The question wasn't why she'd done it. The question was what I was going to do about it. By the time I reached my office, I had my answer. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old books. Dave had been handling legal work for my company for years, but this was the first time I'd needed his services for something personal. "How long has this been going on?" he asked after I explained the situation. 3 days of active testing. But thinking back, there have been smaller incidents over the past few months. I just didn't recognize the pattern. And she admitted it was intentional. Called me weak for not standing up to her sooner. Dave made notes on his pad. That's actually helpful. Shows premeditation rather than spontaneous relationship problems. How helpful? In a no-fault state, it doesn't change the divorce outcome much, but it establishes a pattern of deliberate psychological manipulation that matters for spousal support discussions. I spent an hour going over my options, timelines, and what to expect. Dave was thorough and direct. No sugarcoating, no false hope about reconciliation. Just facts. "You seem pretty certain about this," he said as we wrapped up. "Someone who tests your love doesn't actually love you. They love the control." I drove home with divorce papers in my briefcase and a locksmith scheduled for tomorrow morning. But first, I had some arrangements to make. When I pulled into the driveway, her car was gone. Good. That would make this easier. I walked through the house methodically, gathering her personal items. Clothes, toiletries, jewelry, books, everything that was clearly hers. I wasn't hiding anything or being vindictive. I was just being efficient. 2 hours later, everything was neatly packed in boxes and suitcases, stacked in the garage. I left a note on top. "Your belongings. Available for pickup between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. with advance notice." Then I changed every password she might know. Email, streaming accounts, online banking, cloud storage. If she'd wanted to test my limits, she was about to discover what those limits looked like in practice. She came home around 8, carrying takeout bags and wearing the same clothes from this morning. She'd been crying recently. Her makeup was smudged and her eyes were red. "I brought dinner," she said tentatively. "That type place you like." I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop, working on a new project proposal to replace the one she destroyed. I didn't look up. "Your things are in the garage." "What things?" "Your belongings. Clothes, personal items. Everything that's yours." She set the food down slowly. "Why are my things in the garage?" "Because they don't belong in this house anymore. You can't just kick me out. This is my home too." I finally looked at her. "Is it?" "Because someone who destroys my work and calls me weak doesn't seem to think of this as our shared home. They seem to think of it as their personal testing facility." I apologized. "No, you didn't. You cried and said it wasn't supposed to go this far. That's not an apology. That's regret about getting caught." She sat down across from me. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't want you to say anything. I want you to understand that actions have consequences." "Okay, I understand. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices over multiple days. The only mistake was thinking I tolerated indefinitely." She reached across the table toward my hand. I moved it away. "Don't touch me. We can work through this." "No, we can't. You tested whether I loved you enough to tolerate disrespect. I tested whether you respected me enough not to dish it out. We both have our answers. I do respect you. You called me weak this morning. You said most men would have put you in your place by now. Does that sound like respect to you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I was angry. You were honest. Maybe for the first time in weeks." I closed my laptop and stood up. "The locksmith comes tomorrow morning. You have until then to get anything else you need." "You're changing the locks?" "I'm securing my home against people who don't respect it." "This is insane. You're destroying our marriage over a few bad days." "I'm not destroying anything. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage." She followed me toward the stairs. "What about counseling? What about trying to fix this?" "What would we tell the counselor? That you systematically disrespected me to see how much I'd take, and now you're surprised that the answer is not much?" "We could say we had some communication issues." I stopped on the stairs and turned back to her. "Is that what you think this was? Communication issues?" "I think we both made mistakes." "What mistake did I make?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. She couldn't answer because there wasn't an answer. I hadn't done anything wrong except tolerate her behavior for 3 days longer than I should have. "The Wi-Fi password is changed," I said. "So is the credit card. And the car insurance. Consider it part of your test results. You can't cut me off from everything. Watch me." I went upstairs and closed the bedroom door. Not slammed, closed. Quietly and deliberately, like everything else I'd done since this morning. Through the door, I could hear her moving around downstairs. Opening cabinets, checking drawers, probably discovering all the little ways her access to our shared life had been revoked. Around midnight, she knocked on the bedroom door. "Can we please talk about this?" We did talk. This morning, you told me exactly what you thought of me, and I heard you loud and clear. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. You meant every word. You just didn't expect consequences. The house went quiet after that. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. For 3 days, I'd been walking on eggshells, trying to understand what was wrong with my wife. Now I knew what was wrong with her, and more importantly, I knew what I was going to do about it. Tomorrow would bring new tests, but this time, I'd be the one administering them. Thursday morning arrived with the sound of the locksmith's van in my driveway. I'd been up since 5, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise through the kitchen window. She was still asleep upstairs, or pretending to be. By 7:30, every lock in the house had been changed. New deadbolts, new knobs, new garage door codes. The locksmith handed me 2 sets of keys and a bill. "Domestic situation?" he asked quietly. "Something like that." "Good luck, man. Hope it works out." I thanked him and went back inside. She was in the kitchen, still in yesterday's clothes, looking like she hadn't slept much. "The locks are changed," I said, setting one key on the counter. "This opens the front door?" "That's it." She stared at the single key. "What about the garage? The back door? What about them? How am I supposed to get in?" "Through the front door? With advance notice. Like the note said. This is my house too." "Is it? Because yesterday you made it pretty clear that you see this place as your personal laboratory and me as your test subject." She picked up the key and turned it over in her hand. "I can't live like this." "You don't have to. Your things are still in the garage. Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem anymore." The words came out colder than I'd intended, but I didn't take them back. She'd spent 3 days systematically dismantling my sense of security in my own home. Now she was discovering what insecurity felt like. My phone buzzed with a text from Dave. "Papers ready for signature. Can you come in this afternoon?" I texted back. 2 o'clock works." She was watching me type. "Who was that?" "My lawyer." "You're really doing this?" "I told you yesterday I was doing this. Did you think I was bluffing? I thought you'd calm down and we could talk rationally." "This is me being rational. Irrational would have been throwing you out Tuesday night when you called me weak." She sat down at the kitchen table and put her head in her hands. "I don't know what I was thinking. You were thinking you could push me around without consequences. You were wrong. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me." She looked up, and for a moment I thought she might actually be honest. "I read this article about how to tell if your relationship is strong enough to last. One of the things it said was that couples who can handle conflict together are more likely to stay together long term. So you decided to create conflict. I wanted to see if we could work through problems together. By destroying my work and flirting with other men? I know it sounds bad when you put it like that. It sounds bad because it was bad. It was calculated disrespect disguised as relationship advice." She was crying again, but this time I felt nothing. Not sympathy, not guilt, not even anger. Just a cold clarity about what needed to happen next. "I can change," she said. "I can be better. You had the chance to be better. Instead, you chose to test me like I was some kind of experiment. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes are accidental. What you did was intentional. You planned it, executed it, and when I called you on it, you told me I was weak for not stopping you sooner." She didn't have an answer for that. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "I'm going to work. The locksmith left his card on the counter if you need anything fixed. What am I supposed to do today?" "I don't care what you do today. That's the point." At work, I threw myself into rebuilding the project she destroyed. It was actually easier the second time around. I knew which ideas worked and which didn't. By lunch, I'd recovered most of the lost progress. Dave's office was busier in the afternoon. I signed papers, reviewed documents, and listened to explanations about timelines and procedures. Everything felt surreal but necessary. "She's going to contest this," Dave warned. "They usually do when it moves this fast. Let her contest it. She can explain to a judge why she thought psychological manipulation was good for our marriage." When I got home that evening, her car was gone again. But this time, so were the boxes from the garage. She'd taken her things. I found a note on the kitchen counter, "Staying at my sister's. We need to talk about this like adults." I crumpled up the note and threw it away. Adults don't test their spouses like lab rats. Friday brought phone calls. Lots of them. She called 6 times before noon. I didn't answer any of them. She left voicemails that escalated from apologetic to angry to desperate. Please call me back. We can work this out. You're being ridiculous. People fight sometimes. I'm sorry, okay? I'm really sorry. Please don't do this. Her sister called too. She's devastated. Can't you give her another chance? She had chances. I told her. 3 days worth of chances to stop testing me and start respecting me. She chose not to take them. She made a mistake. She made a choice. Now I'm making mine. Saturday brought a different approach. She showed up at my front door with flowers and takeout from my favorite restaurant. I brought lunch, she said when I opened the door. I didn't invite you. I thought we could talk. We talked. You said I was weak. I disagreed. End of conversation. I didn't mean that. Yes, you did. And you know what? You were right. I was weak. I tolerated 3 days of disrespect before I finally acted. But I'm not weak anymore. She held out the flowers. Please, just let me try to explain. You explained perfectly on Wednesday morning. You tested me to see how much I'd tolerate. Well, now I'm testing you to see how well you handle consequences. This isn't a test. This is our marriage. No, this was our marriage. What you did was an experiment. What I'm doing is damage control. I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. I'll do anything to fix this. Anything. Yes, anything. Then go back in time and don't test me in the first place. I closed the door gently but firmly. She stood on my porch for 10 minutes, knocking and calling my name. I didn't answer. Sunday was quiet. No calls, no visits, no flowers. I spent the day working on projects, reading, and enjoying the peace of a home without psychological warfare. Monday would bring day 7 of her original test. But by then, she'd have her answer. And more importantly, so would I. Monday marked day 7 of her original test. It also marked the day the divorce papers were served. I was at work when it happened, but Dave called to confirm delivery. Process server found her at her sister's house. She signed for the documents at 11:15 this morning. How did she react? He said she went very pale and asked if this was really happening. When he confirmed it was, she just nodded and closed the door. Good. She has 30 days to respond. But based on what you've told me, I expect she'll want to meet before then. Dave was right. My phone rang at 2:30 that afternoon. We need to talk. Her voice was different. Smaller somehow. We've talked plenty. Not about this. Not about divorce papers. What's there to discuss? You tested my limits for 7 days. I tested yours for 4. We both learned something valuable. I learned that I made a horrible mistake. You learned that actions have consequences. That's different. Please, can I come over tonight? Just to talk. I thought about it for a moment. Fine. 7 o'clock. Front door. She arrived exactly on time, carrying nothing but her purse. No flowers, no food, no props. She looked like she'd been crying for days. I let her in, but didn't offer her a seat. We stood in the living room like strangers. The papers say irreconcilable differences, she said. That's accurate. We can reconcile. People work through problems. People who respect each other work through problems. People who test each other like laboratory experiments get divorced. I know what I did was wrong. Do you? Because Wednesday morning you seemed pretty proud of yourself. You called it testing my limits. You said I was weaker than you thought. She flinched. I was angry. You were honest. Maybe for the first time in our marriage. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Was it fair to break my favorite mug to see how I'd react? Was it fair to destroy 3 weeks of work and call it cleaning? Was it fair to flirt with another man to test my jealousy? She had no answer. Here's what I think happened. I continued. You got bored with having a husband who treated you with respect. So you decided to see if you could make me into someone different. Someone who would yell at you, control you, maybe even push you around. Because that would be more exciting than being married to a man who actually loves you. That's not true, isn't it? You said yourself that most men would have exploded by now, would have put you in your place. You seemed disappointed that I hadn't. Tears were running down her face, but I felt nothing. The part of me that would have comforted her was gone. I don't want a divorce, she whispered. I don't want a wife who tests me. We both have problems. I can change. You had the chance to change. Every morning for 3 days, you woke up and chose to continue the test. You chose to escalate it. The only thing that stopped you was me finding my backbone. So now what? Now you sign the papers and we divide our assets. You go find someone who enjoys psychological games, and I find someone who knows the difference between love and manipulation. She collapsed onto the couch then, sobbing like her world was ending. Maybe it was. I was trying to make us stronger, she managed between sobs. You were trying to break me down. There's a difference. I sat across from her, not next to her. The distance felt important. Do you know what the worst part is? I asked. She looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. The worst part is that I actually loved you. Past tense. I loved you enough to tolerate 3 days of systematic disrespect while trying to figure out what was wrong. And you mistook that love for weakness. I still love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of controlling me. You love the power you thought you had over me. But you don't love me. How can you say that? Because people who love each other don't run experiments on each other. They don't test limits and push boundaries just to see what happens. They respect each other. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What if I refuse to sign? Then you'll explain to a judge why you thought destroying my work and calling me weak was good for our marriage. I'm sure that will go well for you. You're different. You're right. I am different. I'm a man who knows his worth now. Thanks for teaching me that. She stood up slowly. This is really it. This was really it on Wednesday morning when you told me I was weak. Everything since then has just been paperwork. At the door, she turned back one last time. I hope you find what you're looking for. I already found it. Self-respect. Turns out it was here all along, just buried under too much tolerance for the wrong behavior. She left without another word. 3 months later, the divorce was final. 6 months after that, I met someone new. Someone who didn't need to test my love because she could see it in how I treated her every day. Someone who showed her love through respect, not manipulation. My ex-wife heard about the new relationship through mutual friends. She called once, asking if we could talk. I didn't call back. She had tested my limits and found them. The test was over, and she had failed. There were no retakes, no extra credit, no appeals process. Some lessons can only be learned once. And some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. She wanted to know how much I'd tolerate. Now she knows. The answer was 7 days, and not 1 second more.